There comes a moment in every life when the old patterns can no longer hold you, when the excuses feel heavier than the effort, and when the voice within you refuses to be ignored any longer. That moment is not dramatic to the world, but it is a revolution inside the soul. It is the day you decide that life will no longer happen to you. It will respond to you. Everything changes the moment you understand that your thoughts are not harmless visitors, but the architects of your reality. The day you turn your life around is the day you stop repeating what has been and start affirming what can be. You no longer say, wish. You say, I choose. You no longer wait for the right condition, you create it. You no longer live by default, you live by divine design. Life has always been ready to give you more than you have ever asked, but it could only meet the level of what you believed. When you shift belief, you shift destiny. The world bows to the soul that finally awakens to its own authority. The day you turn your life around is not the day you learn something new. It is the day you remember the truth, that nothing outside of you has the power to imprison you, unless you grant it permission. The moment you align your words with what you desire, the universe begins rearranging itself to match your command. Not by force, but by law. You speak not as someone who is begging from life, but as someone who is claiming what has always been yours by right of consciousness. You understand that what you feel, you attract; what you fear, you invite; what you expect, you experience. That is the day you remove your attention from lack and place it on abundance, not because the world has changed, but because you have. You realize that every time you declare, I can't, you build a wall, and every time you declare, it is done, you open a door. The day you turn your life around is the day you stop fighting shadows and turn toward the light. You refuse to entertain the stories of limitation, and instead you speak the language of faith, certainty, and command. You no longer ask, how will it happen? You affirm, in perfect timing, in perfect way. Nothing outside of you needs to change first. Not the economy, not the people around you, not your circumstances. The shift happens inward, and the outward must obey. The law is simple: the inner picture forms the outer world. Change the picture, and the world has no choice but to reflect it. You discover that the real battle was never against others. It was against doubt, fear, and the old version of you who kept settling for crumbs when the feast was always yours. And when you finally step into this new awareness, you do not force change, you allow it. That is the day your past loses its grip. That is the day doors appear where there were only walls. That is the day the world stops feeling random and starts feeling responsive. Not because life suddenly favors you, but because you finally learn to agree with the truth of your power. The day you turn your whole life around is not marked on a calendar. It is marked in consciousness. It is the silent inner decision that says, enough of the old. I now align with the highest. I now speak only what I desire. I now believe only what empowers me. I now walk as if it is already done. And from that moment forward, life begins to echo your new command. The moment you shift from wishing to commanding, life begins to respond to your authority. There is a vast difference between a mind that hopes and a mind that knows. Wishing comes from a place of separation, from the belief that what you desire is somewhere outside of you, controlled by forces you cannot reach. Commanding comes from the knowing that the same power that created the universe flows through your words, your thoughts, and your expectation. The shift is not loud, not dramatic, not always visible to others, but it is the most powerful inner transition a person can make. When you wish, you wait. When you command, you create. When you wish, you look at circumstances to decide what is possible. When you command, circumstances bend to match the picture held in the mind. Wishing sounds like, I hope one day things will work out. Commanding sounds like, it is already mine in consciousness, and therefore it must appear. The universe does not respond to desperation, it responds to certainty. It does not respond to effort, it responds to alignment. A wish carries doubt in its tone, even when beautifully phrased. A command is spoken with quiet authority, without force, without pleading. Simply with the knowing that law is already in motion. A person who wishes looks at what they currently have, and decides what to ask for. A person who commands sees beyond the present and calls forth what has not yet appeared. In that difference, entire destinies are shaped. People spend years wishing for change, unaware that the mere act of wishing confirms that they do not yet believe it belongs to them. A command, on the other hand, is ownership before evidence. It is possession in consciousness before possession in hand. It is claiming what is yours in the unseen so it may appear in the seen. The moment you stop asking life for permission and start declaring what you accept, the atmosphere around you changes. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, make decisions differently. You no longer say, "I hope I get the opportunity." You say, "Every door that belongs to me opens in perfect timing." You no longer say, "I wish things were better." You say, "Everything is moving in my favor now." You no longer wait for signs, you become the sign. You speak with the tone of someone who has already crossed the finish line in consciousness, and that tone carries authority that the unseen world recognizes long before the physical world reflects it. Commanding does not require aggression. It is not arrogance. It does not mean controlling others or forcing outcomes. It is the calm certainty of someone who understands that their word is law in their own world. When you command, you speak not to people but to principle. You speak not to the problem but to the truth behind it. You do not argue with appearances because you understand that appearances are temporary projections of old beliefs. Instead, you speak what you choose to experience and let the unseen forces rearrange the visible. This is why the shift from wishing to commanding feels like a rebirth. You no longer try to convince anyone or prove anything. You simply decide, declare, and let law fulfill itself. Those who wish are always waiting. Waiting for timing. Waiting for luck. Waiting for resources. Waiting for people to change. Waiting for confidence to appear. But those who command speak now, act now, believe now. They understand that timing obeys decision, not the other way around. They do not say, "I will be successful someday." They say, "Success is unfolding now, and every step I take is guided." They do not say, "I hope to attract abundance." They say, "Abundance is already mine, and I now align with it." That inner shift releases power that was always there but dormant under hesitation, fear, and doubt. It is impossible to command life while secretly believing you are unworthy of what you ask for. That is why the shift is not just in words but in identity. You cannot command from the mindset of someone who begs. You cannot speak with authority while holding the belief that what you desire is too big, too rare, too far away, or too difficult. The command comes when you accept that you are the rightful owner of what you are calling forth. Not because of your past, not because of your effort, not because you have earned it through struggle, but because consciousness is the only qualification. The moment you feel one with the thing you desire, it begins to move toward you with precision. Life obeys the one who knows, not the one who hopes. People often assume that commanding means taking massive physical action, but the true action begins in the unseen. A person who commands spends more time in inner certainty than in outer hustle. They align first, act second. They speak the result before the path is visible. They do not wait for clarity to believe. Their belief creates clarity. To someone who is still wishing, this looks unrealistic, even reckless, but to the one who commands, it is simply law. You declare the end and the means assemble themselves. The moment you shift into this state, you begin to notice how much of your past language was rooted in soft, powerless phrasing. "I wish I could. I'll try. Maybe if I'm lucky. One day I hope." These phrases seem harmless, but they silently affirm distance between you and the very thing you want. When you replace them with declarations, you close that distance. "I am ready now. It is already happening. Everything I desire is making its way to me. I accept only what aligns with my highest good." These are not affirmations of hope, but statements of command. You do not command to convince the world. You command to align yourself with the law that has always been waiting for you to claim your place. The universe is not withholding anything. It is simply mirroring the level of authority you speak from. If your words carry hesitation, life hesitates. If your words carry certainty, life responds with certainty. Authority in speech does not come from volume, it comes from conviction. You may whisper a command, and it will carry more power than 1,000 shouted wishes. The turning point in any life is not when conditions change, but when the inner tone changes. The day you stop wishing and start commanding, you stop living as a spectator and step into the role of creator. You stop reacting and start initiating. You stop asking for crumbs and begin claiming the feast. And nothing in the outer world can remain the same. Once that shift has been made within you, your inner belief is the blueprint that shapes every outer circumstance. Before anything becomes visible, it is first constructed in the unseen world of thought, emotion, and expectation. The mind does not simply observe life, it directs it. What you hold as true within yourself eventually becomes the pattern that reality must follow. You are not a victim of circumstances, but a projector of them. Everything in your life, whether welcomed or resisted, has been allowed or invited by some level of belief, conscious or unconscious. The world you walk through is not a random arrangement of events, but the reflection of the assumptions you have agreed with over time. Belief is not merely what you say you accept, it is what you feel to be real, even when no evidence supports it yet. You can speak positive words while secretly expecting failure, and life will always follow the deeper belief, not the spoken statement. This is why some people try every method, every strategy, every effort, yet nothing changes. They have altered their plans, but not their inner blueprint. The blueprint is the belief. The structure of your life cannot exceed the structure of your expectation. Change the belief, and reality must be rebuilt around it. Most people try to change life from the outside in. They try to fix circumstances, force outcomes, chase opportunities, rearrange external pieces, all while holding the same inner conviction that things never work out, or it's always hard, or people like me don't succeed. And so, even after a temporary improvement, the old pattern returns, because life is not responding to the action, but to the internal state from which the action was taken. The person they have believed themselves to be keeps reappearing, no matter how many times they try to escape it. But when the belief changes, the world must shift, because the inner cause has been rewritten. The outer effect has no choice but to obey. Your belief is the silent architect behind success or stagnation. If you believe you are not worthy, you will sabotage opportunities without realizing it. If you believe life is unfair, you will only notice proof that supports that belief. If you believe money is scarce, you will repel it through fear, hesitation, and doubt. But if you believe that doors open for you, they will. If you believe that life supports you, it will. If you believe that abundance is your natural state, it will begin flowing in ways your logic could not predict. Nothing in the world is fixed until belief fixes it. There is no neutrality in belief. You are always believing something, either by default or by intention. Every repeated thought becomes a prophecy spoken into the future. Fearful belief attracts fearful outcomes. Confident belief attracts confident results. The mind does not discriminate between what is wanted or unwanted. It simply magnifies what is given emotional energy. A person who constantly imagines worst-case scenarios is not being realistic. They are rehearsing and authorizing the very outcomes they dread. Worry is belief in reverse. Doubt is belief in lack. Fear is belief in loss. And yet, all of them are still beliefs, meaning they still carry creative power. Belief is the soil in which every result grows. That is why two people can be given the same opportunity, the same resources, or the same challenge, and produce completely different outcomes. One succeeds because they expect to, the other fails because they predict they will. Success does not start with action, it starts with identity. What you believe you are capable of, deserving of, and connected to. The world does not respond to your effort nearly as much as it responds to your certainty. The strongest force in human behavior is the desire to remain consistent with your identity, whether that identity is empowering or limiting. Your belief determines what you accept and what you reject. It decides what you feel entitled to and what you feel unworthy of. It is the invisible filter through which you interpret every event. If someone compliments you and you do not believe you are worthy, you dismiss it. If an opportunity appears and you do not believe you are ready, you decline it. Life may offer, but belief decides whether you receive. This is why affirming something you do not truly believe feels empty. Because the words are not backed by emotional agreement. Real change begins when the belief shifts from concept to certainty. Many people try to force his belief, but true belief is not forced, it is allowed. You do not create belief through effort, you uncover it through recognition. The truth is that the highest, most abundant version of you already exists in consciousness. You are not trying to become something, you are remembering what has always been stored within you. Limitation is learned, doubt is learned, unworthiness is learned. When you drop what was learned, what is true rises naturally. Belief is not built, it is restored. A powerful belief is not loud. It does not need constant repetition. It does not beg for reassurance. It carries a quiet, unshakable energy that says, "It is done," long before the evidence appears. You can feel when someone believes in something, because there is no strain in their speech, no anxiety in their waiting. They do not chase, they align. They do not fight for results, they expect them. And because expectation is a magnetic force, life reorganizes itself to meet that expectation. Every breakthrough you will ever experience begins in belief. Before the healing, there is belief in restoration. Before the business succeeds, there is belief in success. Before the relationship arrives, there is belief in love. Before the wealth manifests, there is belief in abundance. The pattern always begins unseen. Life is not waiting to change, it is waiting for agreement. The moment belief changes, the future changes with it. Not gradually, but immediately in the invisible realm, and then visibly in time. If you want to know what you truly believe, look at what you consistently experience. Reality does not lie. Whatever continues to repeat in your life is the echo of a belief you may not have consciously chosen, but subconsciously accepted. The outer world is not the problem. It is the mirror. If you want a new reflection, you do not polish the mirror. You change the face that stands before it. You revise the thought, the feeling, the identity, and life must reflect the revision. Your belief is the master key. It unlocks, permits, allows, attracts, directs, shapes. Nothing is withheld from the one who aligns their belief with what they desire. Nothing is guaranteed for the one who doubts their own power. The universe is never deciding for you, it is echoing you. Once belief shifts from possibility to certainty, from maybe to already, the world has no choice but to follow the new instruction. The world changes the instant you decide to align your words, thoughts, and expectations with what you desire. Nothing in your outer experience can remain the same when the inner dialogue is rewritten. Most people speak from what they see, think from what they fear, and expect from what they have already lived. That is why life keeps repeating itself. The moment you reverse that pattern, when you speak from intention instead of circumstance, think from possibility instead of memory, and expect from faith instead of doubt, you step into a different reality, because you are no longer reacting to life, you are instructing it. Words are not sounds, they are commands. Every time you speak, you are either ordering life to repeat the past, or to construct the future. A person who says, "Nothing ever works out for me," is not describing life, they are directing it. A person who says, "Opportunities find me easily," is not hoping for the best, they are announcing the law under which their world must operate. Words create the atmosphere of your life. Speak struggle, and you breathe it in. Speak ease, and it appears. The tongue is a builder or a destroyer, depending on who is controlling it, fear or authority. Thought is the silent language of creation. You may never speak the words aloud, but if they live continually in your mind, they have already been broadcasted into the invisible field of possibility. The universe does not wait for verbal confirmation to respond. It responds to vibration, and thought is vibration in its purest form. That is why a person who prays in words but worries in thought does not receive what they ask for. Their thoughts cancel their language. You cannot think lack and receive abundance. You cannot think mistrust and receive love. You cannot think limitation and receive expansion. The outer world obeys the inner thought, not the outer performance. Expectation is the final seal. What you expect, you prepare for. What you prepare for, you attract. You may want something, but if you secretly expect the opposite, life will deliver the expectation, not the desire. Wanting is emotional. Expectation is energetic. Wanting says, I hope it comes. Expectation says, it's already on the way. When a person expects good, they walk differently, plan differently, speak differently. They make room for what they have not yet received. They act as if the thing is already theirs in consciousness. And because the universe responds to assumption, not desperation, the experience meets the expectation. The alignment of words, thoughts, and expectations is the true trinity of manifestation. One without the others is powerless. You can speak positively while thinking negatively and expecting failure, and nothing will change. You can think beautifully but speak defeat, and still block what is yours. You can want something deeply, but if your expectation is that things usually go wrong, the energy is already sabotaged before anything begins. Alignment is when all three point in the same direction. When your language, your inner picture, and your emotional certainty are in agreement. When they agree, life must obey. It is not a matter of luck, but law. The world you experience is not shaped by effort alone. It is shaped by the harmony or contradiction of your inner state. That is why forcing action while thinking, this probably won't work, leads to frustration. That is why trying harder without believing deeper produces exhaustion, not results. You are not rewarded for struggle, you are responded to by consciousness. When your inner atmosphere is aligned, less effort produces greater outcomes. Because you are no longer working against your own energy. The moment you begin speaking only what you choose to experience, you cut the power supply to the old reality. You stop feeding it with repetition. You stop energizing it with attention. You stop reviving it with emotional reaction. You replace it with command instead of complaint. Old thought patterns cannot survive when you refuse to repeat them. Old circumstances cannot remain when you no longer expect them. Old experiences cannot return when you no longer agree to them. This inner shift is not dramatic to others, but it is revolutionary to you. You begin to notice how often people speak against their own desires. How they declare limitation as if it were normal. How they narrate failure as if it were identity. How they predict struggle as if it were destiny. When you align your words with what you desire, you refuse to participate in that collective hypnosis. You speak from vision, not history. You speak from intention, not environment. You speak from creation, not reaction, and the world responds accordingly. The power is not in denying what exists, but in refusing to make it permanent with agreement. You can acknowledge the present without declaring it the future. You can see a challenge without calling it identity. You can face a delay without turning it into destiny. Alignment is not pretending everything is perfect. Alignment is deciding that only what aligns with your desire is allowed to stay. You become the gatekeeper of your own reality, accepting only what matches your command, and rejecting anything that does not. Once you live in that alignment, life begins to feel different, not because circumstances change instantly, but because your place in the equation changes. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop begging and start allowing. You stop doubting and start knowing. The outer world is slower than thought, slower than speech, slower than belief, but it will catch up, because it must. It has no authority of its own. It is always following instruction, and the instruction comes from within. The day you align your words, thoughts, and expectations, you stop negotiating with life and start directing it. You no longer ask, will it happen? You say, it is already done in the unseen and will soon appear in the seen. And once that alignment becomes normal, the extraordinary becomes ordinary. Not because life suddenly got easier, but because you finally started speaking the language it always understood.